Today we have Aiden Berenger, and we're going to talk some bodybuilding, some fitness. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit of understanding of where the moustaches come from because it's a very solid moustache, and I like that it's just very consistent, mate. You're always rocking it, which is good. Um, cool, mate. We'll get stuck into it. You're an expert on yourself. Tell us a little bit who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a physique coach slash PT. Do a bit of online, a little bit in-person PT still these days, and I'm also a natural bodybuilder. Officially, as of last year, I did my first comps. But
And you get a
um,
pretty decent result, mate. You won, yeah?
yeah. So my first one, I didn't compete in the opens, so I didn't do overalls. So I didn't have a chance to win the overalls my first one, but I ended up getting, I think, three first and a second.
Cool.
And then my second one I ended up doing opens, and yeah, I ended up taking gold in everything plus overalls. So
Mate, how
pretty
good?
happy with that for my first season for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's yeah, not the easiest sport to just jump into, and sounds like you've got obviously a lot of hard work has gone into it and got a bit of a knack for it. So that's really cool. You're going to continue on competing.
Yeah, I mean the goal at the moment is just to put on more size. Spend the next couple of years putting on size because I built up to that, building the physique that I presented for years really. Although
Yeah,
prep was for 30 weeks or so, I did spend years building the muscle. I did build up to that point, and I'm going to spend a couple more years getting to a better point now because I didn't end up going to nationals, although I qualified.
yeah,
But next time that is the goal. I want to be able to go to nationals and actually be competitive and maybe even beyond that. So obviously, I need to improve my physique from the point it's at now.
yeah, for sure. It's pretty yeah, tough sport, and obviously like it's a long sport in terms of like you said, it takes years and years and years to get to a point, and then more years and years and years to continue on to that, which is really really cool. It's definitely a game of patience. Hey,
Yeah, 100%. Especially, yeah, the growing the muscle is really the building the body.
yeah,
That's a very slow process. A lot of people see prep, and we talk about prep all the time and that kind of thing, but the work is really done in your everyday, day-to-day life, and how you train, how you live, how you eat, how you sleep, all that.
yeah, absolutely, and it's something that people can't really. I think people think that building muscle is like a quite an easy thing and a fast thing, but it's painstakingly slow. And then the more muscle mass you build, the slower it gets. Hey, like
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it is kind of easy, relatively easy at the start. You can just do whatever, um, and you'll grow. But the more muscle, as I say, the more muscle you have, the harder it becomes.
harder it becomes. It's yeah. So the people out there that think they're going to get too big, you're literally never going to do it. Funny,
Yeah,
funny
I've been
story.
trying though. I've been trying.
That's the thing. Funny story on that. One of my mates at the gym I work at, he had a girl come to him and in a PC session, or she said, I'm worried about getting too big. And he's quite well built, and he's trained for 10 years, something like that, and quite strong, and done some photo shoots and stuff like that. Well, right, properly in shape. And he's just standing there at peak time in the gym, and this girl said this, and he's just pointed out about five guys in front of the dumbbell rack, and he's like, "Look at these guys. They've been trying their whole life to get as big as humanly possible, and they still haven't done it. You're not going to do it." And a few of the boys were
Yeah,
like, "What?" It's like it just is. It's so slow to build a lot of muscle. So we'll get
yeah.
stuck into that today. So tell us a little bit of about how you got into PT, mate.
I studied a bachelor's in sport and exercise science
Oh, cool.
after
Awesome.
school. I always liked sport. I always kind of liked science and maths and that kind of area as well, and it just made sense for me. I
Yeah.
liked going to the gym. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Let's just go and do sport and exercise science. I wanted to do exercise physiology at first,
Yeah.
but then did my last year of uni, and I'm like, I kind of want to have a crack at being a PT, and it was kind of looked down upon a little bit by people going to like ex physiology and physio as just a PT kind of thing. But I had the mindset that if I did this, I could be a really good PT. I could be a really good coach because I have this foundational knowledge that is a little bit more expansive than the average Cert 3 and Cert 4
Yeah, for sure.
coming out of TAFE. So I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna have a crack and try and start my own business, and yeah, that's how I got into it. But I've been training, just going to the gym since I was probably like 15, 16. I've always loved it. So yeah, I just really wanted to help other people get jacked because even just helping my mates,
Yeah.
like they'd ask me questions and I'd always light up wanting to to help people. I wanted to give them advice, and I want to explain how things work. And I think that's kind of like my interest in science and how things work. I think that's how it comes into it. I just love understanding how things work, why things work, and teaching that to other people as well.
Absolutely, mate. And that's the cool thing about Hey is like we're super lucky that we work in an industry that we I don't think anybody really should be in the industry if they don't love it, and we're lucky that we do get to love the thing that we do. Doesn't mean it's the easiest thing to do all the time, but if you've got passion about it, and I think like that's cool. Like when you say like you do light up when you talk about it because you're interested in it, and I think that's such a cool thing that there's a lot of people that do jobs just for the sake of doing a job, whereas and particularly if you're doing bodybuilding as well as coaching, like it does consume your whole life in a way because it's you got to be on with your sleep, you got to be on with your nutrition, but it's a lot easier to do that when it's the thing that you enjoy the most, which is really, really cool. And particularly if you've got that background of sport and exercise science as well too, I should now understand like watching some of your content and where that comes from, because you've got that like more deeper level of understanding, and then you can understand how you can get clients better results.
Yeah, for sure. Further learning is always so important, though, regardless of where you have your initial education from.
Absolutely.
I know so many guys, even from Cert 3 and Cert 4, who have a better understanding of physiology and anatomy than I do. And, just doing sport and exercise science is not nearly enough to become a good coach. And I thought it was starting out, but I realized very early on that I needed to learn a lot more about people and, psychology and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the thing, hey, is like, I think one of the cool things about PT is, particularly if you're really interested in it and you want to make a career out of it, and the initial certification gets you into the industry, and if you want to be good at it, there's so many things. It's almost endless. Not the only industry, but it's almost endless the amount of things you can continue to learn, and particularly like you said with the it's people focused at the end of the day as well too. So if you're not good with people and understanding how people behave and how to get behavior change and all those sorts of things and interact with people, instead of it just being like, because that's the difference between just like telling someone what to do and coaching someone what to do, I think. And there's a big difference. Like there's obviously different levels of people, that some people just want to be told what to do and they run through a brick wall and they'll do it. But other people aren't always going to respond that same way, which is quite cool. And the progression that you can make from the start. I think though, having a foundation of something like that and an interest in something like that allows you to progress a lot further forward with what you do with the career.
Yeah, I like to think so, for sure. And I would say it probably has. And I always say to new trainers, just really try and have a good foundational understanding of physiology, how the body works, rather than just finding these little niche things on social media. Try to understand why that works and how we've gotten to that point of understanding. Because if you can have that, then you're going to understand a lot more, and you'll be able to cut through a lot of the bullshit that we see on social media as well.
Which there is a lot.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into. So when it comes to how long have you been a PT for now?
I started officially working as a PT at the start of 2021.
Cool. Yeah.
So, what's that? 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Nice flown as well.
Yeah, for sure. And because the average time that someone's a PT is only about 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So someone gets into it, it's like, and I think a lot of it's because like social media exaggerates a lot of things, and people think it's really easy to get into. Like it kind of is, but it's not easy to do for a long time and be good at.
Yeah, I struggled for the first year or so, man. Like for the first 6 months, I was earning next to nothing. For the next 6 months after that, I was just getting by. Like I just didn't have the soft skills. I didn't understand. I was focusing on all the wrong things, and I thought clients would just fall into my lap.
Yeah.
Definitely not the case. I didn't understand how to build trust and all that kind of stuff with potential clients on the gym floor. And you can't just get chucked onto the gym floor and expected to understand how to do that. And I think that's why people only last like 3 to 6 months a lot of the time. Because they're like, fuck this is not what I was expecting.
No. It's like, there's so many things that it is what you expect, but it's just like there's a lot that you're just like, oh, I didn't expect that I'd be dealing with that, or because at a point it's like a bit of a sales job as well too, yeah. So like
Yeah.
not solely focused on that. Like we want to make sales so we can help more people and make a bigger impact. But if you don't, like you said, the soft skills of like how to talk to people, how to coach people, all those sorts of things is really harder to pick up because initially, like you said, you've been training since you're 15 years old, so you enjoy the training, but it's not always about the training. It's a lot about the training, but there's a substantial amount that's kind of not.
Yeah. I focused too much on sales and it stressed me out. Like I kind of,
Yeah, okay.
and I think it came across to people too much that I was trying too hard.
Yeah,
And what really helped me was just like resetting my mind, forgetting about sales, and really just focusing on helping the person.
yeah,
And like kind of going back to how I was before, where I really wanted to help people.
yeah,
I kind of lost that, and that negatively affected my ability to get clients because people can tell when you're stressed out and anxious trying to get a sale.
yeah.
Whereas when you're relaxed and you're just like, I just want to help this person, let's see how I can help them. I personally made a lot more sales. And that doesn't mean certain skills when it comes to sales won't help in conjunction with that, but you need to have that at the forefront of your mind, I think.
Absolutely, because it's focused on the people in front of you, not necessarily not you. You know, obviously you're there to help, but it doesn't do if that person sees it's just about you, then you're probably not going to make a sale. You know, or
Yeah.
have the ability to then continue on and help them, which is what a big reason why we do it. So tell us, what when it comes to like what you do with your clients, what's the type of client that you typically work with?
Majority of my online clients are physique-based clients. They want to really focus on recomp, build muscle, lose fat. They're not like competitors or anything like that. Although I do want to start transitioning more into that. So people just want to get stronger, start programming, habit formation around nutrition, stress management, which is a really big one.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you know, sleep is a really big part of that as well. So really just managing individuals' nutrition and training online. In person, I'm doing really the same stuff, but just seeing them face to face as well, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to that, like what are the things that you're most passionate about when it comes to health and fitness and getting your clients better results?
Um, this is kind of like a big picture kind of thing,
Yeah,
but one of the big ones is like seeking out discomfort and
yeah,
aiming upwards. I feel like that's something that I've structured my whole like a lot of my behaviors around. I think
yeah,
there's a great importance in that, and I think that's one of the big reasons why I train.
yeah,
And I think without realizing it, it's always been one of the big reasons why I've kind of stuck to it. And I want to have that kind of physique goal be an avenue for that, for aiming upwards.
yeah.
Having a positive relationship with things like anxiety and discomfort and all that, because I do believe that has will have positive repercussions outside the gym, and I always want the endeavor of chasing a physique to be a net positive on an individual,
Yeah.
which is why part of the reason why I've also decided to just stay within the kind of the natural part of bodybuilding,
Yeah.
because I do want it just to be a positive thing for me. I want to get older and be like, oh, look at this guy, he's kind of like taking care of himself, and I don't want to look like I'm 80 years old when I'm 50 and like I've got all these problems, and I want to be a good influence on my children and all that kind of thing. And I think seeing a lot of natural bodybuilders now that I look up to, I'm like, damn, like they are in a really good spot, and it's a really admirable kind of way they've gone down, you know, their careers and their lives in general.
Absolutely, mate. That's really cool, and I think that's the thing is like there's a lot of misconceptions about what training is and what bodybuilding is and all those sorts of things. And if you do it well, like I look at it like the elements of like bodybuilding is the same as sort of general strength training. Like obviously there's slight differences, but effective training or productive training shouldn't be a detriment to you in and like short term and long term because it should be something that should add to what you do. And I think having a like a bigger picture of that of like where that takes you and how that how you can then influence, people around you to be better, and like you said, aim upwards is really, really cool. I think it's funny when people are like, I think a lot of the stuff comes from probably lack of knowledge and education as well too. When people are like, "Oh, I lifted weights because like I lifted weights once, and my uncle he lifted weights twice, and he told me this way, and then I hurt myself or something like that," and
Yeah.
therefore that is bad. Or they see someone go down the route of um, using performance enhancing drugs, which obviously we know there's ways you can do it safer, but if someone abuses
Mm.
that, then that becomes a negative thing, and it can it be detrimental to the person and then the people around them, and it gives like a negative connotation. But coming at it from a, like you said, having an avenue of something positive, I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. I think as long as your behaviors reflect your values,
Yeah.
then it will be a net positive on your well-being. And that's why there are many people who use PEDs, who are into bodybuilding, enhanced bodybuilding, that are very fulfilled and very happy. But I think, as I said, as long as your total behaviors makes up your total array of values and you understand yourself and your own values, then it will be a net positive. But a lot of people don't understand their own values and they go so far down one side and they neglect all these other values and they're like, I'm so successful, why am I miserable right now?
Yeah.
And it can happen with clients as well. They think they want something, they think they want to go all in, but then they end up neglecting all this stuff. And that's where it's my job as a coach to not be super selfish and think about what I want and what I think is important, but trying to understand the individual and what they want. And yeah, it's really important.
Absolutely, mate. And I think, like, yeah, as a good coach, understanding your clients makes a big, big difference, and making sure that I think like a lot of things get exaggerated by social media as well too, particularly because we see so many people in great shape that have probably been, enhanced, and then tell people that they're not or whatever it might be. Although it's a little bit of a shift now that people are a lot more open with it. But
Mm.
from the client side of things, I think people see they might not necessarily have an understanding of those things kind of happening, and how chasing one thing might not actually be the thing that they want, and understanding what's the motivation behind that. And I think it's to your point of like understanding your values and why you want to do something makes a big, big difference.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Are you kind of like in the powerlifting world a little bit as well? Are you doing a bit of powerlifting or no?
Kind of. I dabble between a few things. Like I've been around for a long time, and I've been a coach for nearly 13 years now. So I've done quite a lot of stuff. And
Yeah,
my girlfriend, she's a national level competitor in
yeah,
powerlifting. So I'm around that a little bit. I've done a couple of novice powerlifting comps just because for me, like I'm 33 now, I still like to train a lot, but I know that I'm never going to be elite at powerlifting or whatever it might be, but I'm like, I want to be able to do powerlifting. I want to do fitness comps. I want to be able to do these sorts of things because of that. But yeah, I'm not a powerlifter. Sometimes people call me a powerlifter, and it's an insult to powerlifters.
no,
I just like training, mate. I love it all.
nah. I rate that, man. I rate that. It's important. I think
Absolutely.
it's good to have a focus on uh, performance in general,
Yeah.
regardless what field you're in.
Yeah.
And that's also why I like natural bodybuilding because a lot of really high level natural bodybuilders they understand that it'll it's the same as powerlifting in the sense that you're just trying to improve performance over time,
Yeah.
and that is the really the goal. And that's what all like top level coaches and competitors understand to a higher degree. And there's not really that much difference between end of the day bodybuilding and powerlifting in my mind.
Absolutely.
Apart from obviously exercise selection and obviously powerlifting being very focused on the three key movements. But yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's intelligent coaching, and it's intelligent training because you can take the same principles from bodybuilding and apply it to powerlifting, or at least have the lens to critically think and assess what you're trying to do. And that's been always my thing with training is in why I try to do. I don't try to. I'm definitely not an expert in all the things that I have a crack at, but I come from the background of like I guess a little bit more sports performance. I used to play rugby and stuff like that myself, and I find that like goal oriented thing of like working towards an event or a game or a task or whatever it might be, much like yourself with bodybuilding. Like you've got to have the process to get to the sort of the outcome, and how you tweak and change little things along the way. And there's, again, as you said, like exercise selection, but at the end of the day, like the good training principles are going to be, whether you're playing a sport, whether you're doing bodybuilding, whether you're doing powerlifting or weightlifting or whatever, you've still got to be able to apply those concepts and principles to the training. I think that's the cool thing about it. And as a good coach, and if you've got a good foundation of knowledge, then you can start to be like, oh, cool, let's tweak this, let's tweak that, and move in that direction. I find that it's like putting a puzzle together. I think that's the fun part.
Yeah.
And for you, it's like you look at it from like an aesthetic standpoint, which is a puzzle, to be like, do we need more of this? Do we need more of that? How do we progress this? And manage those things, which is quite cool. I think like much the same to your point of like when you talk about, when you said earlier, like you get excited about that. Same thing. I'm just like, cool, there's a puzzle. Like let's figure this out. How does it work? And then how can we make it better?
Yeah, and that's what programming is really, isn't it? Maximizing the stimulus, managing the stress, or minimizing the fatigue, so we can maximize that stimulus, and making sure that stimulus is portioned into the right qualities that you need to put towards your desired outcome. Which for me is really just focusing on key lifts that induce hypertrophy. For sports performance, it can be just different training qualities that are required for the sport. But really, it's the same thing, putting that puzzle together.
Yeah, and I find it super. I get super excited about it because it's fun. I find it. I don't understand why people are not so excited about it. I think it's weird that people don't get excited about programming, but that's a joke. Cool, man. So let's talk about that then. When it comes to building muscle in your field, like if we're looking at it from a bodybuilding standpoint and body composition standpoint, what are some of the mistakes that you see people commonly make, and what do you think that people can do to basically get better results?
Just first one I see all the time is just doing too much volume, way too much volume, and the quality of that volume not being there.
Yeah.
Because it can't be there when you're doing so much volume.
Yeah.
If you're doing 20 sets per session, no one can train adequately hard with 20 sets per session. I don't care who you are. The quality of that will drop off throughout the session.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Not thinking about exercise order.
Yeah.
Because the quality of work throughout your session will decrease from set to set.
Yeah.
And if you've got lagging arms and you're always putting arms at the last two exercises of the day, you're going to have lagging arms. Yeah. And I used to do the same thing. I used to always do chest first. I probably do chest like 3 times a week as well.
Which is good. Like,
and my physique, I had like a pretty well developed chest.
Yeah.
Kind of developed shoulders, and then pretty small arms.
Yeah.
I had that for long. I'm now working on fixing that. You can even look at my physique now, and my photos on the stage. You can see that I am kind of chest dominant still.
Not a bad thing to be, mate.
Nah, I mean, chest is a good muscle group. But yeah, exercise order is a big one.
Yeah.
What did I say? Volume, exercise order. Coming back, I think volume. So you've done powerlifting a little bit, right?
Yep.
What's the standard kind of amount of volume you would see like a powerlifter's program?
In terms of like per body part, per movement?
Yeah, or even like across the week as well, or even per workout, whatever.
Per workout, I think like in terms of, it's hard to put like an exact number on it, but I think one of the big things that differentiates bodybuilding and powerlifting is that powerlifting and probably more weightlifting is kind of my area, but I look at it from a skill standpoint. And so and this kind of goes back to then like the more sports performance, but I look at it as a skill standpoint, and there's going to be a certain degree of skill that you'll need to be able to execute the movement to the degree that you need in a given competition setting.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at skill, then, and because the movements that you'll look at with powerlifting or weightlifting and in sports performance, they're probably going to be more skill dependent than a bodybuilding exercise. And repetition is the mother of all learning. So the
True.
more time you can practice a given skill, on average, you'll probably be better at that skill than if you practice that less. So
Yeah.
with the let's say a squat for powerlifting or weightlifting, you want to be really on it with the skill because the degree for injury is quite high and the potential for load is quite high as well too. So if there's a deficit of skill, then we could potentially injure ourselves or get less performance. So on average, that's where you see things like 5x5 and
Yes.
5 sets of 6 or something like even like closer to more sets like that for 10. I think it's very important to make the distinction between that is building more skill at a relatively high intensity, which we get some muscle mass growth from, but it's not optimal for muscle mass growth. And you'll obviously
Yeah.
go on to, and I think that's the big thing that where people differentiate or have a
And
hard time differentiating.
often the intensity though, say you're doing 5x5, you might start at what, correct me if I'm wrong, you might be training like at a lower overall intensity
Yeah.
in terms of proximity to failure.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be doing 5 sets of 5 to failure on squats.
No, you can't.
Where I see a lot, yeah, but I see a lot of guys kind of doing that same amount of volume as you would see in weightlifting or powerlifting,
Yeah.
but then taking the approach of bodybuilding where like I need to go to failure, and it's like that's just not going to work. And
So what,
yeah, that's
I really like this chat because I think this is where the where people do make a lot of mistake as well too. So if you're saying, so we know that if we look at weightlifting, powerlifting versus bodybuilding, and we need more skill, more time of loading, but at relatively less intensity. What would a typical bodybuilding set and rep scheme look like for you? If it was, it's a bit general, but yeah.
it is. I do a lot of my work between the 5 to 8 rep range, I would say.
Yeah.
Probably like 70% of my work, to be honest. If there's a skill deficit or an injury risk, or maybe you are managing injury, I might go higher towards 10, 15. I try and keep a lot of my workouts no more than like 15 sets, even some like 10 to 12 sets, and just really try and drive the intensity. And that's a change I've made over the last couple of years. I used to do a lot more volume, and I find I had to deload every month or two.
Yeah.
I had niggles so much more, and I just wasn't progressing as much.
Yeah.
But training high intensity, keeping it like 2 sets per exercise all the time, 10 to 12 sets per workout, but being able to do that more frequently and for a lot longer period of time, I've made a lot more progress because I've been able to stick to that for a long period of time, and I've gotten a hell of a lot stronger as well.
Yeah, for sure. Can you tell us, tell the audience, what would you mean by high intensity? Because I think that's one thing that gets confused a lot.
Oh yeah, intensity in my mind is just load. So if you're doing, or how close you are to failure. Sorry, I should say that's more what I'm talking about when I'm talking about intensity, not load. So like going all the way to failure, that's 0 RIR, 0 reps from reserve. 2 RIR, 2 reps from reserve. That's a relatively lower intensity. That's what I'm usually referring to when I talk about intensity.
Yeah.
So you can have a very intense set that is 20 reps.
Yeah.
And you can have an intense set that's 5 reps, by that proximity to failure.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things that people struggle to understand, that the people don't train anywhere near, like I sort of go more like an RPE prescription as opposed to a reps in reserve, but I give I know they're not exactly the same, but I'll give a reference of like, if you do this RPE, you'll probably be about this RIR. And
they're close enough.
Yeah. And so I think, because I do lend myself more towards the strength training side of it as opposed to the bodybuilding side of it. So I think that's where that plays in my favor. But I think when people don't understand what relative intensity for a given set is and how close to failure they actually are, like, and most people don't go anywhere near close to what a 0 RIR is. You just see them do a set and you're like, you probably had like 7 or 8 reps left there, and that might be why you're not building muscle.
Yeah, and that's why I don't prescribe intensity for some of my clients, depending on their level of where they're at with their training.
Yeah.
If they're new, I just tell them, we're just going to try and train as hard as we can.
Yeah.
And once I can see through the training videos or in person that's getting harder, I'll pull volume down a little bit. and keep driving that intensity. And once I can see that, this person really understands what failure is, and they know how to train hard, and they're training so hard that it might be coming to at a detriment to their performance, then I'm like, okay, let's be a bit smart about this now. I'll usually, 1 to 2 reps from reserve is where I spend a lot of my time. I don't always tell people to train all the way to failure, because I think it could have possible negative effects later in that session, which isn't worth it. Like grinding out like a 10-second rep at the start of your workout at the end of a set, that's going to have a negative effect on your total volume load, especially coming into set 2 and then into the next exercise and all that. In saying that, I let my emotions get the better of me all the time, and I grind reps a lot. But because I grind reps, I know that is not ideal to do all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And that's typically one of the things that you see with coaches, is that we probably maybe not sometimes push that a little bit too hard on a grindy rep, because you don't want to. What was the thing you posted the other day when you were doing the RDL, or your chat in your head before your
Oh yeah. Yeah, don't want to be a bitch.
It's like there's that meme of C-Bum. It was like basically something silly about like, basically if you don't get this, you're a little bitch, and all your family dies or whatever if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy the stuff you say to yourself before a big set. I finish and I'm like, God, I need some help.
Yeah. And it's nothing worse than if you video it and you look it back and you thought that rep was like really grindy and slow, and you're like, I actually probably had like 2 or 3 more reps there.
Yeah, and we don't want that.
No, so you don't want to have that conversation with yourself after that set of like, you are a little bitch.
Yeah, but especially on legs. Legs is the biggest one. The way it feels versus the way it looks, it's like, damn. And that's why I love training legs with clients in person.
Yeah. Especially
my online clients, bring them in for a leg session here and there, because they're always like, man, I had a lot more. I thought I was training hard, but I had a lot more. Especially on things like leg press, where it's very stable, and it's all just about how hard can we push the legs here.
Yeah.
I love it.
That Jim Lecco pendulum squat, mate, it's fucking horrible at right.
Yeah. Bro, you think that's bad? That's easy compared to the one at Olympus.
Really?
I like doing pendulums on this one because it's like, it feels so light compared to the Olympus one.
Really? What brand is the one at Olympus?
I can't even remember. I'd have to check for you, but I'll let you know. I'll go in there and let you know.
Yeah, cool. Because we've got at the gym I work at, we've got the Atlantis pendulum, which is quite good. I like the pattern on it, but it's got the counterweight on the back side of it, so it's much easier than that Jim Lecco one. That Jim Lecco one, like, it feels 10-15 kilos heavier than what the Atlantis one feels like.
Yeah. The counterweight definitely helps.
Yeah, I find that Jim Lecco one's probably the hardest one I've done. The Watson one's quite brutal as well too.
I've heard that, yeah.
But pendulum, taking it, 1 or 2 reps shy of failure, or even 2 failure, is never going to be an enjoyable time.
Yeah, I did so yesterday, and I'm currently sitting here just like moving my legs about. Otherwise, they're gonna go super numb right now.
Yeah, it definitely gets you. So sounds like, so we were just chatting about in terms of the volume. You would train on average a quote unquote lower volume than what most bodybuilding programs would say. I say quote unquote lower volume because lower volume relative to what most people think is necessary. But I would argue that it's significantly more effective.
Yeah, and I think it's becoming a lot more popularized now.
Yeah.
For a lot of people that are interested in hypertrophy. There was that big Mike Mensa trend for a while when a lot of his stuff was going around. He went too far, I think, in the low volume, high intensity camp, and I can't remember what he was saying, but it was like train like once every 14 days or something, and just do 2 sets or something ridiculous. Like, that's not going to work, especially if you're natural. But what he was saying about lift the intensity, pull the volume back, it makes a lot of sense. And you see a lot of the guys who train with higher volumes back in the day, and you see the videos, and they'll get these big pumps, but you can see where they're ending their sets, and it's like they're doing 4 sets here because they're training so far away from failure. But because they're doing 15 to 20 reps, it burns so much, and it feels really intense, and it feels really hard. But that sensation doesn't necessarily mean you're really maximizing motor unit recruitment, which is the goal. If your goal is to maximize hypertrophy in a set.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple of like I think from a potentially there are it's not to say that there's not benefits from training higher reps, but I think that the benefits are not what people perceive them to be. If
Yeah,
and I guess that's me looking at it more from like a strength and conditioning sports performance side of things. Like if you want to focus on the quality of maybe building just like a little bit more local endurance and capacity in a muscle,
yeah,
you can't do that on five because it is obviously that's relatively high intensity from a load standpoint. And if you go on, 1 or 2 RRI, that's a relative intensity really high.
yeah,
And so sometimes you do need that. I think having it's important to make the distinction between, and no, you're not saying that, but when people see people do 4 sets of 20 reps, it's like, well, what are you actually trying to achieve with that? If it is
mm.
build muscle mass, you're probably not doing that, or you're not doing that anywhere near as effective as you could be.
Yeah. Unless you're an absolute freaking animal.
Yeah.
Training to failure in 20 reps is not fun.
No,
I encourage any of you to go on a leg press and try and do 20 reps to failure. It is fucking brutal.
no, no. I hate when I like misload something and I like, well, not misload it, but like you do like let's say you're going for 8 and you realize you do like on the pendulum. I did it yesterday. I did 8, and I was like, that's nowhere near close enough to where I need it to be. So I need to continue on this set because otherwise, I would have to contribute it to be either a warm up set or not anywhere near as effective as I want it to be. So I,
Yeah,
I had to do. I think I
yeah,
did like 12 or something like that. And I was like, I'm gonna go heavy on next one. I'm not doing that again.
yeah, yeah. I usually try and stop those sets as early as possible. But once you're 8 reps in, you're like, fuck, I've
Yeah,
already created some fatigue. Like,
yeah,
should I
yeah.
waste that now?
I might as well do this. So tell us when you touched on motor unit recruitment a little bit there. Tell the audience because I think that's a quite important one and not necessarily overlooked. I just don't think people are aware of it. Tell us why you would have your reps relatively lower, so it's the 5 to 8 rep range, and what do you mean by motor unit recruitment for someone who doesn't know?
Basically, you want to create enough force that your motor units, which is part of your nervous system, which stimulate muscle fibers, you want them to stimulate as many motor units as possible in your motor unit pool, so you can get as many fibers stimulated as possible. And you need to get close to the point where you're reaching your maximum kind of ability to produce force to get to that point. So basically, you can just work as many muscle fibers as possible and start working those higher threshold motor units, which only really kick in when your muscle is under significant tension. And if you're trying to get to that point, training 20 to 30 reps, you're going to get a lot of things that interfere and get in the way before you get to that rep range. It's going to make it a lot harder. You're going to get a lot of fatigue and you're going to get a lot of like burning sensation, and your perception of effort is going to be a lot more. So train to failure at 5 reps, the perceived effort, although it's very heavy, is going to be a lot less, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also you just get you start closer to like rep one will be significantly more effective on a set of 5 for building
Mm.
muscle mass than rep one on a set of 20 because I explain it to my clients as if you're doing 20 versus you're doing 5, you're going to get about 5 effective reps, give or take. So you could do 15 to get to your 5 that are going to be closer to effective, which then, as you said, you create more fatigue. And I think skill standpoint might be good sometimes, but
Hmm.
if you can shorten that and get closer to it being somewhere between 5 to 8, you waste less time, but yeah, and you create more stimulus and get a better outcome essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and from a bodybuilding standpoint, or my standpoint, I rely less on skill because I'm
Yeah.
trying to focus on movements that have a great degree of external stability, that don't have a huge deal of coordination involvement. So for me, I can spend a lot more time in those lower rep ranges and it doesn't matter as much
Yeah.
for my own training.
Yeah, for sure. Back to your point of Mike Mentor, he used to do though. Wasn't I was going to say he would do like the like drop set on drop set on drop set on everything, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he'll do a lot of like they're kind of like my reps and or well, it wasn't my reps back then, I don't think, but like rest pauses and drop sets and all that kind of thing. Really trying to milk as much as he kind of could out of a set. And that's somewhat controversial these days. A lot of like people on the internet will say that it's not the best option for you because you're going to create a lot more fatigue and it's going to have a negative impact, stuff like that. I think the impact of fatigue is somewhat overblown.
Yeah,
It's getting somewhat overblown, and I think people shouldn't be so afraid of fatigue.
yeah,
But we do want to maximize the stimulus while reducing the fatigue. I think that's the best. You should be aiming for that. But you're not going to die from doing a couple rest pauses,
no.
in a workout.
Sometimes, like if you just focus on getting a little bit more of a pump, it's not going to be a bad thing. In sometimes make you feel really good in the moment of like, yeah, I feel like I'm twice the size of I normally am.
Yeah, yeah. As long as your whole your workouts don't revolve around how can I get the best pump possible,
Yeah,
which used to be my approach when I was younger, and it stuffed up my progression.
yeah,
But that's why I say we need to, as bodybuilders, we need to think like athletes and think like how do we maximize performance. We're not going into the gym to get a certain feeling or feel a certain way.
mm,
We're going to look at performance from the previous week and what do we have to do to improve on that performance over time.
mm,
Because if you just get a preacher curl and you go from doing 30 kilos and you eventually get up doing 60 kilos for the same reps and the same technique, your biceps are going to be a lot bigger.
yeah, yeah.
And that's all there really is to it.
Absolutely. I was going to say something there. I think one of the big misconceptions is people confuse like hard for the sake of something being hard, and they attribute that or they equate that to then being effective because it is hard.
Mm.
So, that was like I did this workout and we did 4,000 reps. It was really hard. That's going to be effective. Well, if your goal is to build muscle mass, objectively speaking, it's significantly less effective than if you did, 4,000 is a drastic example, but, if you did
Yeah.
10 by 10, that would be quite hard, or, two sets of 5 to 8. The two sets of 5 to 8 is objectively significantly more effective than 10 by 10.
Yeah,
But,
100%. And
yeah, sorry,
I would
continue.
say running a marathon is very hard, but it's not going to help you build muscle in your legs. So it comes down to are you training the quality to
Yeah.
the best degree?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the biggest things. Is like if you look at, I use that example quite a lot with with clients. Is if it was always about more, Olympic level Olympic distance cyclists would have the biggest quads because they cycle a lot and use their
Mm.
quads a lot. But objectively speaking, they don't have as big a quads as bodybuilders. So it's not always about them doing more; it's about being more effective. Yeah,
You know who does have big quads though?
that.
Sprint cyclists. They
Yes,
have
yeah,
huge
yeah.
quads.
Yeah,
They're
really, really
massive.
good example of like
Mm.
high threshold motor units,
Yeah.
absolutely maxed out, and then they obviously strength train quite a substantial amount. But
Yeah.
what's the time that they like an event? It's like less than 60 seconds. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% certain, but it would be. I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And the force that they produce is very very high.
It's nuts, yeah. And that's another misconception as well that annoys me is that the more muscle you have, the less athletic you are.
Yeah,
Whereas just because a lot of bodybuilders just don't train any other qualities,
yeah,
but if you build a lot of muscle and then train those more athletic qualities, you're gonna probably be in a better spot. Like you're gonna be even a better athlete. So
absolutely. And because it's a weird thing, I've always found it weird because again, that's on the side of the I've been on with sports performance and stuff like that, alongside general pop. But it's like if you train solely like a bodybuilder, you're probably not going to get better at your given sport. But if you can take some of those qualities from what the bodybuilders do, implement that into your training, and still train your sport, you're going to be a better athlete. Because
yeah,
if you've got stronger, you've got more muscle mass, and it's in the areas that you kind of need it to be. Like, if you were a sprint cyclist, you don't need jack shoulders. That might be detrimental. But if you had more more muscle mass on your quads that allowed you to produce more force, you will be better if skill is equal.
yeah. Provided you're training them to produce that force quickly, which
Yeah.
is obviously important as well. But you need to be able to produce that force in the first place.
Yeah, that's the thing. So a couple of the misconceptions there. So what do you think people can do to get better results than if they were to, there's someone's training quite high volume? What's a way that you would then work around it? Or what, you've got a client that comes to you and they've done, the classical high volume sets, drop sets, myo reps. Where do you try to move people in, or how does that look?
I might just say, let's just strip it back to one set. Have a go doing one set
Yeah.
for a couple exercises and see how we go. See what you can actually, how much you can milk that set.
Yeah.
And then once they see you can progress of very minimal volume, then they're going to make that volume count a lot more.
Yeah.
And then gradually work it up from there if need be.
Yeah.
That's usually the approach I'll take.
Yeah. And so you have clients do quite frequently. You just have them do one set of a given exercise.
Contextually, yes. Sometimes it'll only be for a short period of time. Like, I think they're struggling with intensity because they're so hardwired for doing too much volume.
Yeah.
Then I'll really strip it all back for them, and I'll say, don't think about all these sets, because people will do a set, and in the back of their mind while they're doing the set of squats, they're thinking about the fact that they have 3 sets to come. So if we take that mental load off and we're like, let's just do one set and make this set count, then they can kind of discover what intensity is and how hard they should be training. In that case, I'll sometimes use it, and other times it just makes sense to have one set in a given workout, depending on the muscle group and what areas I kind of want to develop, and if it's a strong point, maybe I'll just keep it down to one set, because one set is still very effective.
Yeah.
And the more sets you do, the less effective those sets are. Yeah. And most people really underestimate how effective one set can be in a workout, and how effective doing one set, say like 3 times a week, how effective that can be. Yeah. Because you're hitting that exercise fresh, you're hitting that muscle group fresh. So one set across 3 days is going to be a lot more effective than 3 sets on one day.
Yeah, for sure. Because as soon as you start to then create fatigue, everything is then going to drop off to a certain extent relative to that first set.
100%. And that's not to say that 2-3 sets are bad at all. Like, majority of my clients, I think on average, probably do, the guys who care about hypertrophy a lot, will probably do on average 2 sets per exercise, sometimes 3. Very, very rarely do I program 4 sets on an exercise, just because it's taking too much of that workout volume and giving it to one quality or one movement, which I don't like to do too much. I'd much rather split it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 sets is where I like to be when someone knows how to train hard. I think it's a good kind of sweet spot.
Yeah, for sure. And particularly with bodybuilding, you're trying to, you are looking to hit not necessarily not necessarily every single session are you trying to target every single fiber of a direction of a muscle, but you are looking to get a bit more of a broad spectrum of that, because you're trying to build the body. Whereas if you look at it just from a movement pattern, you might spend a little bit more time and less variation. So how many if you were to take, so we're doing on average 1 to 2 sets, sometimes 3. How many sets do you think per muscle group, per workout would you prescribe?
If I'm writing, let's say, like an upper lower program, which I do a lot, I think it's a good split of frequency. I might have 2 exercises per muscle group.
Cool. Sometimes
even less, so maybe like 4 sets per muscle group. I'll say anywhere from like 2 to 4 sets per muscle group per session. If we then split that across the week, for the weaker muscle groups, you can be looking at 8 to 10 sets per muscle group. I don't really see a need to have much more volume than that if intensity is dialed in. Some volume recommendations these days are a bit absurd, like 20, 30 plus and stuff. I'm like, that's just, I don't understand how that works in practice. Like, it might work for 1 week, and you might get a whole lot of muscle swelling and like a huge pump, but I'm not sure it's the best idea for progression over the course of like multiple training blocks.
No, and that's the thing, like practicality at the end of the day, like it's not to, like when people look at science and stuff like that, when they're looking at, because there wasn't a study that came out recently in the last 6 months, it was something like 52 sets a week or something silly like that.
Yeah.
And I saw it was those guys, Wolf Coaching and Milo, I can't remember his name, but they did
Yeah, I know the ones you're talking
yeah,
about.
they did quite because I think they were the ones that came out with it, and they're sort of the Renaissance Spiritization sort of side of things, and they did a funny reel that was basically like taking the piss out of it because they came out of it and they were like, you want to build this, you need 52 sets, and it was like, you want to build this, you need 52 sets a week, and there is a certain level of like, I think sometimes it's not to say that higher volume stuff doesn't work at all because I think everybody's done higher volume and got some results on it. But if you can make it more effective and more time effective and more effective in a given session, why? And like you said, if you do a set, like a really good set, maybe a couple sets, and you can repeat that more frequently as well too. You have more opportunities to grow across the week as opposed to
Yeah.
15, 20 sets in one workout and then the DOMs that you have for the rest of the week, you can't train it any more frequently than that.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
then you've got you're trying to recover from so much muscle damage before you even then actually create more muscle tissue.
100%. And that's the reason why full body splits are becoming more popularized now. I'm not sure like what kind of echo chambers you're in on social media, but I keep seeing stuff around full body splits now.
Yeah.
Because the idea of maximizing stimulus while reducing fatigue, and the importance, the benefit of high frequency, that's getting more popularized, and because of that, full body just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I haven't done a full body split in years.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not sure how I feel about it from an enjoyment standpoint,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
But I can see in theory how it's beneficial. And I do give it to some of my clients. And some of my clients who they might be training like jujitsu on the side of, their bodybuilding or like, strength training, that kind of stuff. And they can only train maybe 2-3 times a week.
Yeah.
Full body, it's a really good option for a lot of people.
Absolutely, because then you can distribute the volume quite evenly, and it's a little bit more general in that nature to someone doing jiu-jitsu. You can allow for more recovery and stuff like that. I find, like you said, the enjoyment factor of it, like I don't know that I would enjoy, maybe in some ways, if I would enjoy going in for knowing that I'm doing full body and you're like, cool, upper body is just like a little bit more fun, like getting a pump in your upper body, like shoulders and chest and stuff like that feels a little bit more enjoyable. And I don't know that I want to muddy the waters with like some ridiculously hard sets on pendulum squat and stuff like that in the same workout.
Yeah. Like
I
my
don't know.
favorite, my favorite feel is a push pull leg split. I love like a push session, love
Yeah.
a pull session. Legs is the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't do it now because I can just feel that it's not as effective.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like I even like 10-15 reps. I don't do that much anymore because I know that it's not as effective for me. But I still like the feeling of doing like 15 reps on biceps. You
Yeah.
feel like your arms are going to explode. And then, or like doing 20 reps on flies, and then you get in the car to go home and you can't even turn the steering wheel. Like, I miss that feeling a little bit.
You can still do it, mate. As long as you get your last 5 reps that are effective, you're sweet.
Yeah,
And
it's true. It's true.
you did say earlier that the fatigue isn't that big of a deal.
It's true. It's true.
I
Yeah.
saw. Do you follow Paul Carter?
No, I got blocked years ago.
Oh, dude, really?
He blocks everyone.
What
I blocked
for?
him. Sorry, he blocked me because I asked him. This was back when he was saying that wide grip pull downs don't train the lats because
Yeah.
it's not in the sagittal plane. That was
Yeah.
years ago. He's since gone back on it now, but
Yeah.
at the time I was like, how can that be the case when the lats, one of their primary roles is shoulder reduction?
Yeah.
And he was just like, he just blocked me. I want to see that guy's block list because it is probably absurd. Like the amount of people he's blocked. I know more people that can't see his content rather than people who can see his content.
I saw a reel the other day, and it was basically because he's big on like the effective volume and effective reps and stuff like that, and no drop sets and supersets and things like that. And it was basically like, have you seen the TV show True Detective?
No.
No, anyway, so it's got Matthew McConaughey plays this like quite psychotic detective, and basically he's interrogating someone, and then at the end of the interrogation, he basically just walks up and really psychotically just says to someone who's like, basically you should just kill yourself right now. And the meme was basically 17-year-olds doing drop sets to failure, and Paul Carter is Matthew McConaughey saying basically just kill yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I see the memes. Like I understand. I know his views still. I don't see his content because you see everyone just parrot it all the time. So
yeah,
I know what kind of yeah, yeah.
but that's
What I don't
funny.
understand about effective reps is I used to think that really low intensity, could still result in hypertrophy if you have enough volume, but
Yeah,
you just need heaps of volume. That would make sense.
yeah,
Because you see like mechanics, for example, who have super jacked forearms. They're not training forearms to failure, but they're just doing so much volume on low intensity all the time.
yeah,
Or like like Rafael Nadal, you see his forearm and it's like his left forearm's massive.
yeah,
So I assume he's not just training his left forearm to failure on like 5 to 10 reps.
yeah,
So if they're not getting into that kind of 5 effective rep zone,
yeah,
but I thought they're making up for it just with super amounts of volume over
yeah.
time. If that's not the case, like how does that happen? Why are they there at the point they're at with that hypertrophy? And that's a question I kind of want to. I want to ask one of those guys one day because
Yeah, it
do
is.
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is an interesting one, and I think this is where it's an interesting chat with Olympic weightlifters and quads, because there is a like, if you were to look at athletes that have the biggest quads outside of bodybuilding, you're probably going to look more towards someone like an Olympic weightlifter, because there's a high volume of squatting in terms
Mm.
of um, yeah, it is interesting. There's high volume of squatting in all the things that they do, high volume of pulling and stuff like that. I wonder if, like, there's one of the things with motor unit recruitment is you have to be able to have almost like a skill of recruiting a motor unit, and the higher skill you have, or the higher efficiency you have of recruiting a motor unit, then the more you're going to be able to use that. But it is an interesting one with um, the training of failure as well too. So I wonder, like, at a point volume does work per se, yeah,
Mm.
because otherwise you wouldn't see these people with like abnormally large body parts that haven't trained to failure of what we know it is in terms of strength training, bodybuilding,
Yeah,
but they still grow muscle, yeah.
yeah. It's the same as like previously the really obese people. They always have big calves, or often have really big calves.
Yeah,
They're not getting into that effective rep zone for
yeah,
their calves, but it's just so much volume with a relatively low intensity over
yeah,
time, which does result in hypertrophy.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's something I always think about. Now, it always comes to my mind when people are talking about the effective rep model being, like the last 5 reps and Chris Beardsley and all that.
yeah.
Um, I'm sure he will probably have an explanation for it, but yeah,
Have you read his book?
no, I haven't.
It's quite good. I've read it second time through. It's quite dry, as Chris Beasley's not the most exciting person, but it. I listened to a little bit of Chris Beasley and Paul Carter's podcast, but it's annoying. Paul Carter's substantially more annoying and takes away from the whole podcast a bit more. But I do. He talks a lot about the size principle with motor unit recruitment,
Yeah.
and it's all of the very similar basis, but on average
Mm.
lower relative volume compared to what your typical bodybuilding, like the old school bodybuilding stuff would be, which I found quite helpful for communicating it to clients as well too, and getting my head around it a little bit more.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think like the biggest things, like one of the biggest things we've seen for the last couple of years is you don't have to do crazy high volumes to grow muscle. That
Mm.
you can do that, but it might not be the most effective way to do it. And if do you need to take up like um, do you need to be fat to build calves? Do you need to be a mechanic to then get big forearms? Do you need, and then it's like, well, we don't need to. We can do it in other ways. But I think there's something in it. It'd be interesting to see what the next few years see, because I remember chatting to one of my mates about it with he did Do you know Cal Raystick? Raystick, I think his name is. Pro coach, I think, is in the UK, bodybuilder coach. But he had a thing called Muscle Mentors, and they were talking about that with the Olympic weightlifters and quads, because they also have some of the bigger quads you'll see out of any athletes, but they don't do slow tempo and they don't grind a whole lot of reps. So there is something in that. I wonder if it is just this skill of recruiting the high threshold motor units really fast.
And it's also the fact as well as another component that they are where they are in their sport because they probably always had good quads.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah.
So like there's that component which muddies the water and it makes it hard to come to a conclusion, you know, because those guys with those genetics, they can probably do like 2 sets of leg extension to like 6 RAR a week and just grow, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like that with my calves. They just grow like that, and I don't need to do too much for them.
I wish.
But it's not good for anything else though. Like, don't run fast, don't do anything. People are like, oh, I wish I had good calves. I'm like, yeah, but they don't do anything. Bigger chest is way more important. Okay, let's move on from that. Let's do one thing I like is a top 10 exercises, and why your top 10 exercises can be your top 10 exercises for what you like to do with clients, or what you just see as the most enjoyable and most effective for you. Like, doesn't need to be anything other than that. What do you got?
This is tough. So I thought about this before, but I was thinking more about like if I could only do 10 exercises for the rest of my life, what would they be? That's kind of like the what play went down my head.
Well, that's where I stole it from Chris Williamson, Modern Wisdom podcast. Yeah. I think it's a cool one because it like shows, what you enjoy. And sometimes people will answer like not the most, quote unquote perfect exercises just because I really like this one. It's fun.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, I definitely want a machine chest press in there because it's stable, good movement. You can stimulate the whole pec. Super easy.
What brand you got? Have you got a particular?
Well, it would have to be a good one. I'm not too fast, as long as it has a descending resistance profile.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah, so it's not super heavy at the top. I don't want that. Machine shoulder press, or like a Smith machine shoulder press, I think could be good because there I can just change my technique to be a little bit more side delt, a little bit more upper chest. I want upper chest have press a little bit more on the sagittal plane, so which means arms in front of the body a bit more. For my pulling, I think RDLs definitely. I need a hinge in there, so that's 3. Then I was like, okay, what squatting movement do I want? Do I want to just like go with a leg press and call it a day because it's versatile, it's easy, it's stable? But I'm like, I might miss the feeling of a weight bearing down on me, trying to crush my spine.
Yeah.
So
it's a good
feeling. Like, let me go for a pendulum instead.
Yeah.
Just because it's a great movement. What did I do then? I was like, for back, I was unsure.
Yeah.
I definitely want some sort of chest supported upper back row.
Yeah.
So we can look at like just a nice machine row. Nautilus have a lot of good machines. Or even just like a T-bar row with a chest support for the upper back. That's going to basically do the job.
Have you used the what's the fucking, is it Prime strength? Yeah, Prime. Have you used the Prime chest supported row?
What's it look like? Is it like a...
It's the green one. It's got the adjustable, you can adjust the resistance profile on it based by where you place the
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't used it, but I've seen it on Instagram before.
Oh man, it feels like feels like in the stretch position, like it's not going to move. Once you start getting moving, you're like, oh cool, and then it drops off quite a bit, but it's quite cool. It's a good one. The chest support row is a staple, needs to be in every program. Just about.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
I think. Then I'll just have to chuck leg extension, leg curls in there.
Cool.
Because I need to train leg extension. Obviously in the short range, you need to get some leg curls to. It'll be seated leg curls as well, by the way.
Yep.
Seated leg curls over leg curls. That's 7.
Yeah, we've got 3 more.
Yeah, and then I need single arm row for the lats.
Yep.
Definitely one of those in there. They're one of my favorite movements for the lats overall.
What would
As
you?
long as I can have some sort of chest support, like I don't mind if it's on a cable, I
Yeah.
don't mind if it's on a machine, but I want to get my arm out from my body and drive it down in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you
for
just
sure.
play around with like the arm angle, or do you just go pretty much straight out in front?
Um, I don't fuck with it too much. I used to try and like kind of turn away from it a bit more, try and get more stretch and that kind of thing. But I don't think it's worth uh, the decrease in like stability and stuff you can sometimes get from doing that. So I'd rather just get in a position where I can lock in, I'm stable, and I can just move a lot of weight and
Yeah.
drive down to the hip. That's going to really be the goal for me. Um, I then wanted to add in wide grip pull down to train lats in the frontal plane.
I won't tell Paul Carter that. Oh no, he likes it now. Yeah,
No, he likes now. Yeah,
he likes it now.
we're
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
But just because I think my lats need it, I need I need to train both their functions. I can't miss out on that. But because of that, I then only have one exercise left,
yeah. You can go
which is
more
that I haven't done.
exercises as well too, mate.
Sorry,
You can go more exercises as well too. Not hard and fast rules here. But what do you got for
but
level?
I'm trying to stick to the 10. But then I have one more, and I haven't done triceps, I haven't done biceps, I haven't done calves,
Yeah,
and I haven't done lateral raises.
yeah,
So I'm like, how do I fit these in? And I thought, my triceps are okay, and I can do a kind of, I'm already doing chest press, shoulder press. I can just get my triceps working there. I don't really need to focus on my long head that much, which is
yeah.
like what will be working when you keep your arm tight by your side. So I'm like, I'm going to go with a preacher curl, and I'm just going to accept the fact I'm going to have shit calves the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's fair. Mate, if you get jacked enough, and then you just get so much mass on your upper body that it's just like being a fat person, and then you get big calves.
100%. Or I can just wear trackies all the time.
Absolutely, there's many people that have done that. With the preacher curl, would you just go like stock standard barbell, like with a easy bar on the preacher curl, or would you go machine?
Oh, I think I would prefer machine preacher curl, but I wouldn't mind one like the one at Riley's. I can't remember what brand it is, but it has the two isolated arms, so you
Yeah,
can do like single arm on it. Or
yeah,
the Jim Lecco one, yeah. Something like that's pretty good. It has a good resistance profile.
yeah,
It's pretty heavy in the bottom, and you can turn away from it and do single arm or do both arms. And yeah, I love a preacher curl.
yeah.
I think they're a great movement. Like they tick all the boxes of what you need for a bicep curl. And people often overcomplicate bicep training. They think they need all these different exercises. Just choose like one, at most two movements, and just get as strong as possible on them, and your biceps going to improve.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was the other gym I work at. There's a couple of boys that we were. They would refer to, with powerlifting. You've got the big three, so squat, bench, and dead, but they would refer to it as the big four: squat, bench, dead, and preacher curl, which is that's something
Break
I
that.
get around. Got to do a preacher curl. The Jim Lecco one's quite cool. Hey, apparently that's the one that C-Bum has in his gym.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. The
It's
Jim
pretty
Lecco.
heavy.
Yeah, yeah. It's the only thing is if you've got someone on it from a PT client standpoint that like sometimes the lowest weight on it is too heavy in the bottom
Yeah.
position, but they just need to get better at preacher curls.
No, that's it. But yeah, Olympus has a few machines that are very heavy,
Yeah,
and like some that are very light as well.
yeah,
So I guess like work certain people up to like certain machines. But it's also kind of cool when you'd be like, what, we've finally got to that point where we can jump on this machine now. Like this is like just the big machine, the heavy machine.
yeah, for sure. For sure, mate. I like it. All really solid exercise. You've got a lot of lower body exercises in there, which is cool. Most people go more to the upper body.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do I have? I had pendulum, RDL,
Leg curl,
and
leg
then
extension.
leg curl, leg extension. I feel like they're just the staples. You just need those, if you want to develop legs. Like I could just do, RDLs, like relatively straight leg for hamstrings, but you're still not getting that whole kind of knee flexion, and I don't want my knees to blow out, so I like to have, be training my knees properly.
For sure, and also you've got to honour John Meadows in the grave with the leg curl at the start of the workout as well.
That's it, every single time.
Yeah. What was I going to say? The Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the things with hamstrings is that you do need to train both functions of it. There was a period in the industry, or at least with the side of it that I was on at my gym, where people wouldn't train knee flexion so much, and then people ended, not me, so I would always do it because I'm like, it's another function of the muscle. But then people would end up with knee injuries and all these sorts of things. And it's like, yeah, because you're not basically training that side of the knee. You're going to end up with some discomfort at a point.
Yeah, and especially if you don't know how to hinge for the hamstrings
Yeah.
properly, then a lot of the time you're not getting that much hamstring stimulus anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, definitely, particularly on an RDL. What else we got, mate? What do you got for some? Can be super general, but I guess we're looking at exercise selection there, but it also can be just concepts or principles or nutrition. In when it comes to building muscle, getting in shape, what are a couple of things that you think are overrated, and what are a couple of things that you think are underrated?
I want to give you a couple maybe controversial ones.
Cool. More controversial,
Um,
the better, mate.
Lateral raises, honestly,
Yeah. Okay.
for the side delt.
Yeah.
I do them all the time, by the way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think you can get a pretty solid side delt stimulus from the way you do your overhead pressing.
hmm
Because if you're overhead pressing, with like kind of in the frontal plane, you're not really bringing your arms out in front of you at all.
Yeah.
Yes, it may be uncomfortable for some people at first, but if you're here and you're coming up from this position here, it's the side delt doing a lot of that abduction
Yeah.
of the humerus. And if you've got really heavy load, you're going to get a pretty good side delt stimulus. And the data suggests that it does have some pretty good leverage in this position.
Yeah. Okay.
Press. And I personally have found that my delts have progressed a lot. So you used to have the mindset of don't bring my arms back here because it's dangerous kind of thing. But since I have been pressing more like this now, my side delt in combination with the volume I'm doing with lateral raises has really improved a lot. But I think the idea of just spam lateral raises as much as you possibly can,
Yeah.
I think that's overrated.
Yeah. Fair.
That's one.
Which is why it
Second,
wasn't
bulking.
in the top 10, mate.
Sorry?
Which is why it wasn't in the top 10.
Yeah, that's it. And 100%. That's the reason why I decided to leave it out.
Yeah, fair play. Bulking, what have we got here?
Bulking. I just think it's unnecessary. You don't
Yeah.
need a massive surplus to build muscle, and I think it forces you to spend more time in an energy deficit, which is not ideal for performance, especially the way a lot of people cut with low food quality, too much volume. They start cutting, and after 4 weeks, they're already decreasing performance, or even after 1 week, they're dropping in performance.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that consistently, like half the year, or even a quarter or a third of the year, it's a lot of time you could spend growing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's better to, you know, aim for maintenance to a small surplus, and again, really adopt that mindset of an athlete and just try and, improve performance over time. And that's what will help build muscle. If you can stay in that kind of mindset of just ticking the boxes each day for like 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, then you're going to build a lot more muscle. Like when I was leading up to my comp, I didn't cut for like, I think 18 months or something.
Yeah.
And yes, to be fair, I was a little bit fat, but I put on a fair bit of fat, but that wasn't the intention. It just kind of happened because I didn't cut for a long time because I wanted to just stay in that growth phase.
Yeah.
And if I took the mindset of let's just eat big to get big, I would have had to cut after 6 months at the very most.
Yeah.
So yeah, bulking very overrated in my opinion.
And it's one of those things as well too, is like the more fat you gain, like you said, the longer you need to be in a deficit. If you're gaining new fat as well too, then that fat's not going to go anywhere. You're going to have those new fat cells with you for forever, unless you get them taken out. They're going to be more ready to take on more energy and gain more fat faster as well too. And I think it's people looking for like the fast way to like hack muscle growth, in terms of, well, if a 250 calorie surplus is good, well then a 500 will be twice as good, and then 750 calorie surplus will be then 3 times as good. So I'll gain You'll gain weight probably significantly faster, but muscle tissue is going to come on at the rate that it will come on as a natural athlete, and it's going to be
Yeah.
painfully slow.
Yeah.
And then you got a
100%.
degree goal. Yeah. So those two things are overrated. What do we got for underrated?
Um, if we're talking exercises, I think a 45-degree back extension,
Cool. Yeah.
really underrated tool for building up your hamstrings, your glutes. Often it's very underloaded. People don't
Yeah.
they won't seek out to move as much load as they would say on an RDL. But if you grab a barbell, you hold relatively wide so you can still have a good range of motion, because if you hold narrow, your arms will be outstretched, you'll hit the floor straight away. Hold relatively wide and really focus on getting really strong in that movement, and don't go into too much kind of posterior pelvic tilt. You can get really strong stimulus on the hamstrings. Like, if you've never done it before, grab a 20 kilo bar, doesn't have to be super heavy, and focus on doing all the things you would do in like a stiff leg deadlift or an RDL, and you'll feel like your hamstrings get really, really strong stimulus. So
Yeah.
I think that's underrated personally.
I've seen a
It's
couple.
nice and steady.
Yeah, that's a good one. You see, like back to talking about weightlifters. Weightlifters do back extensions really, really fucking heavy and have strong posterior chains. I've seen quite a few machines now coming out that are like
Yes.
plate loaded or pin loaded that are a 45-degree back extension, which is
Yeah,
a really great idea.
for sure.
Because
Definitely.
it takes that skill element away, and I think that's a big thing for bodybuilding is if you don't have as high degree of need for skill in a given exercise, you can focus more on output and then get more out of the muscle, and it takes that the need for skill away from like an RDL, but allows you to just smash your glutes and hamstrings on that, which is cool.
Yeah, 100%. I've never tried one of the like cable ones. I've seen like some of those cable pin loaded ones,
Yeah.
but I definitely would be keen to try them. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, it does look awesome. I'll see if we can get one at Riley's. I'll chat to the owner.
That'd be mad.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
He's
Um,
the owner. Have you met Fatty before?
what does he look like?
He's the short, Middle Eastern looking guy.
Yeah, I met him a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, he's super nerds out on exercise equipment, mate. Like he loves all that bodybuilding shit and like strength profiles and resistance profiles and stuff like that. It's cool.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You can tell. I mean, he has good machines there.
Yeah.
Decent machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else have we got for underrated?
I've got a couple of things. From an exercise standpoint, I think kelso shrugs are underrated.
Yeah.
Because many people struggle with getting proper retraction in their rows when it comes to training the upper back.
Yeah.
And when you think about the upper back musculature as a whole, all it does is retraction. It doesn't work on your upper arm at all. Your rear delts work on your upper arm, but your traps, your rhomboids, their main role is to get the shoulder blades together. And a lot of people just don't row properly when it comes to upper back. So getting really strong on a kelso shrug, or at least learning how to do kelso shrugs, which if you don't know is like you start in a kind of rowing position, like you would maybe an upper back row. You do it on a T-bar or whatever, and then you keep your elbows straight, but you just protract and retract. So I think that's a pretty handy exercise and pretty underrated, especially for teaching how to do a good solid upper back row.
Particularly as well too, like with the a lot of people have an over reliance on just retracting and not
Yeah.
actually moving into protraction and stretching out the traps and rhomboids, and then being able to go in that opposite direction. I really like that one.
Yeah. And if you're a lifter, like bodybuilding, powerlift, or whatever, and you first get that feeling of really protracting under load, like it feels so nice. Just getting that big stretch across your back, because you're more than likely pretty tight through there if you're not training properly.
Yeah, and you're going to have DOMs for days up and down your back. Love
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
I think that's a really, really important thing. Like, good that you mentioned that, because we chatted earlier about like misconceptions around, with if you build muscle, therefore you're going to be immobile. And back to the very, very start of the show when you were saying like, your pursuit for harder things as a avenue to get better at, and it sounds like there's an element of longevity in it. And if you are training effectively with, quote unquote bodybuilding exercises, you should be taking joints through decent active ranges of motion and trying to encourage, not to an extent where everything must be stretch bias, but if you train something through its active range, where active contractile range, you're going to end up with pretty decent mobility, going to have pretty good joint function and all those sorts of things. And I think it's looking at the function of a muscle. I think functional gets taken out of context, and people are like, "Oh, this isn't functional." But it's like bodybuilding at its like truest sense is like you're looking at the function of a muscle in a joint, and you're looking at how you can train that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should be effective and productive training.
100% agree. 100%. And if you have tightness or weakness or whatever, sorry, if you have tightness, often there's something missing in your programming.
Yeah.
If you're getting injured or tired or whatever, there's a weakness there, and there's this element missing. If you train the body in its, as a whole properly, through full range of motion, you should feel pretty good, provided you have, your load management is not shit.
Yes, yeah, which can be taken out of context, but absolutely, mate, I love it. What else have we got? You've got anything else that's underrated?
Yeah, underrated, definitely big thing. Is meditation / breath work.
Yeah, okay, cool. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's just good for bringing that nervous system down.
Yeah,
And stress is going to be quite high if you're training hard, you're smashing caffeine all the time, doing all this stuff. But anything that can get you better at being present, I said, just down regulating your nervous system, it's going to help you recover better. It's going to help you be more focused, which these days with social media and everything is quite difficult. It's going to make you sleep better, which in turn is going to have a huge impact on your hormonal profile, your daily energy, all that kind of stuff. And that's obviously going to help you build a lot more muscle over time. I'm quite a generally anxious kind of person, and if I don't do things like that work and bring my nervous system down, I just don't function very well. So for me, that's been huge. I train way better when I'm practicing like 10 minutes of meditation or breath work frequently each day. Everything's better.
yeah, for sure. I love it, man. That's cool. I think, like you said, like this day and age where life is busier with the constant notifications and looking at things like that makes a big difference. How would you implement that day into your day, or where do you implement that into your day?
I try in the mornings.
Yep.
Just first thing I do when I wake up, or maybe like this morning, because I'm cutting at the moment, I try and do a few things before I have my first meal.
Yep.
So I woke up, went straight to the gym, did 20 minutes of cardio, which I saw you there.
Yep.
Then I went to the beach and did just 10 minutes of meditation at the beach. Calmed myself, because obviously stress is going to be a bit higher when you're exercising.
Yeah.
Downregulate that nervous system, get it done, then go home and have my first meal. Often we'll do something like that. Sometimes I might pair it with, if I am rather stressed out, or do like a heavy leg session, I might afterwards do like maybe a cold shower with some meditation, or a cold shower with like some breath work, because that's going to have an initial spike in your nervous system, but then it's going to have the opposite effect, which again helps bring that down and reduce your cortisol and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's usually how I'll implement it.
I think
it's hard.
Yeah,
it's only 10 minutes, which seems easy, but when you are busy and always thinking about other shit or going on your phone as soon as you wake up, it can be hard to have the discipline to just sit without stimulus and without feeding your brain with dopamine all the time. But it does have a profound impact. I'm a big fan of it.
Absolutely. It's crazy how we almost just don't let ourselves kind of think these days, like actually like have thoughts. Like obviously that we do, but in terms of like absence without the distraction to like actually think. And I quite often will just walk along the Esplanade and try to leave my phone at home. And the times that I leave my phone at home, I usually feel the best. And I usually have way better ideas as well too, with like nothing to. The only thing is then it's handy to then be able to write an idea down. But that is probably taking away from needing to do that. Is taking away from the act itself. But it's crazy how well you can think when you don't have constant stuff around you.
It's why we have so many good ideas in the shower, because sometimes the shower can be the only time that we're not pumping our brain with like information.
Yeah.
So thoughts actually have a chance to come up.
Yeah.
And that's really why only 10 minutes doesn't sound like much, but 10 minutes of purely just sitting with your awareness and being aware of your thoughts, that is a long time for us these days, which sucks. And I'm trying to make a conscious effort to let my brain just wander and be bored more.
Yeah.
Because when I was young, I think about all the times I used to be bored and how creative I felt.
Yeah.
I used to be a lot more into music and making music, and like even like when I was really like drawing pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because you're bored and you had to get this internal stuff out. You had a chance to get the internal stuff out because you didn't have external stuff coming in constantly.
Yeah. That's cool, mate. I really, really love it. That's a good little segue into the next little bit to finish off. The most important 3 questions of the whole podcast. I've really enjoyed it, mate. It's been cool to chat to you. But the most important, and it's a little bit of what you just chatted about there. What are you listening to, mate? What's your favorite music? What do you listen to when you train? What do you listen to when you're not trained? It sounds like it's something you're interested in.
I listen to so much, man. Like, we were starting from like the 70s. Like, I used to listen. Well, I still do listen to like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, stuff like that. I don't mind a bit of the 90s stuff, especially when I'm training. Like, Offspring.
Yeah. Oh man, how good's Offspring?
Yeah, like Linkin Park. Rise Against as well.
Yeah.
Band like that kind of vibe. I have my times where I'm into that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
What else? Then staying on the rock or kind of alternative rock. I love a lot of Australian music as well.
Cool.
Bands like Violent Soho, Sticky Fingers, DMAs. Love those kind of bands.
Yeah. Cool.
Sometimes though, like I also listen to a lot of rap as well, depending on what mood I'm in.
Yeah.
So I love drill. I love grime as well.
Cool.
Sometimes that kind of helps when I'm training, depending what mood I'm in. Not usually when I'm doing legs. Legs, it either has to be like some heavy stuff, like real heavy metal, or some more calm, like orchestral kind of stuff. Like Hans Zimmer and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was actually the other day when I was getting into pendulums. What was I listening to? I think I was listening to Jewel of the Fates, the song. Do you know Star Wars?
I've never seen it actually, but
right. So in episode 1, there's a big fight scene.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the best of the movie, and it has this particular piece.
Right. Okay.
And who's the guy who does the music? John Williamson, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's an amazing composer.
Yeah.
And there's this one particular song. It's just so epic.
Yeah. Cool.
And that kind of stuff I'll just do sometimes.
Yeah.
If I need to like really trick my brain to think I'm going into like some sort of battle that's a lot more important than doing a set in the gym.
Yeah.
Especially during prep, I used to just listen to so much like orchestral stuff.
Yeah.
It's really got me into like almost feeling like you're an anime character, like a protagonist in an anime, like yeah.
And I like that as well too, because there is a stimulus there from the music, but it's like sometimes when you listen to particularly something like drill or grime or something like that, it can be like quite kind of chaotic, which is hard to get your mind into a place where you kind of need to go. Sometimes it's cool, but also sometimes like having something that's maybe a little bit more consistent and less sometimes chaotic is a cool thing. Yeah,
it's interesting how that works.
Yeah,
for sure.
I find myself I do that as well too. Like there's have you seen the movie Wrath of Man? Jason Statham.
No.
Anyway, there's a really cool soundtrack. Well, I find it cool, but it's basically just like all these organs and it's like really dramatic and it's like sometimes I'll just listen to that and work and train and I'm just like I'm on because there's no lyrics or anything like that. But much to the same sort of vibe of like what you're talking about there, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
And so you said you used to create music, mate, or you make
music?
Yeah.
I was in a band and that took up a lot of my life from like age of about 17 to probably like 21, 22.
Oh. Yeah.
22. I stopped because I wanted to focus more on this.
Yeah.
And doing this, and that took a lot of time.
Yeah.
You're gigging on the weekends. Sometimes you're going into state to play and stuff like that, and you're writing music, recording music. It requires a lot more energy.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't something I just wasn't willing to give that much energy to it.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't love it as much as I just love training and coaching and all that. But it was a great experience while it lasted, and it's also not the most conducive to putting on muscle. Like,
Yeah.
playing gigs, getting smashed,
Yeah.
partying basically all the time,
Yeah.
and trying to,
Trying to build
like
muscle.
focus on the gym.
What was your specialty?
Oh, I play bass mostly.
Cool, cool. I find
Yeah.
to me it's I find it amazing that how people can make music. It just seems like impossible to me. I know that it's obviously not, but in terms of like putting stuff together to make it sound like something that is like cool to
Mm.
listen to, I think it's like one of the coolest things.
It's like programming,
Yeah,
like putting the puzzle piece together. Once you know the governing rules,
yeah,
then you understand how to just like work on one thing at a time, and then you realize that once you work on one thing at a time, it just all goes together perfectly.
yeah,
If you're following these particular rules,
yeah,
and then occasionally someone will come along and like break a rule but still make it sound amazing,
yeah,
and then you're like, fuck, this is a new thing.
yeah,
And it's kind of similar with programming.
yeah. That's cool. I like it. Everything I do is by like frameworks. I need to think about things with frameworks and
Mm.
principles and stuff like that because it allows me to get out of my own way. So I think that's cool. With makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
What do you got for favorite food, mate?
Favorite food?
Yeah,
Oh, my man. I don't like this question.
don't like it.
No, it's because there's so much good food.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
if I really love a burger.
Yeah,
The burger's up there for me. Um,
classic man food burger.
yeah, it's hard to go past a burger, honestly.
True. Yeah,
Um,
convenient,
but
tastes good, heaps of variation.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like there's so many different burgers you can have.
yeah,
I think I'll say a burger, honestly.
cool.
But obviously, there's so many different types of burgers. Just a fat one with like you're talking beef, cheese, bacon,
Yeah,
some mad sauce on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely not on the cutting diet, mate. Or could be.
No, no, it's not in this everyday diet, but it wouldn't be one of the best foods if it was in your everyday diet.
Nah, definitely not. Definitely not. That'd be taking the if it fits your macros approach a little bit too far out the window.
Yeah, just one
Uh,
meal a day.
and then yeah. What do you got for favorite movie, mate?
This is a real hard one as well. Um, I I reckon Interstellar's up there. It's
Yeah,
pretty
okay.
basic bitch thing to say
Yeah.
because it's a lot of people would say that, but that's probably gonna be one of my favorite movies. Um,
Matthew
there's also-
McConaughey is hard to go past, mate.
yeah, yeah. I love Wolf of Wall Street as well. That's another basic bitch one to say, but
Yeah.
that's such a good movie. I love that.
It's almost like just about every guy's dream. Like just be there for a period of time.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I love like a lot of like the classic series as well. Like I love Lord of the Rings. I've
Yeah.
watched Lord of the Rings like so many times. Um, man, yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one because there are a lot of movies, man.
Absolutely.
How about yourself? Do you have a favorite movie?
What's that?
Do
Me?
you have a favorite movie?
The one that comes to mind would probably be The Gentleman. With
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's a great movie.
yeah, and it's funny because I never used to like English. I don't like English TV or anything like that. And it's not a like I don't even like Australian TV. I just grew up watching a lot of American stuff, which we do here in Australia, I guess. But
Mm.
the I don't know. It's just like it's just really well put together. Like it's like really smart and quirky. And Matthew
Mm.
McConaughey, he's great. So yeah,
Mm. Did you watch the TV show?
I did. Yeah, I was a little bit. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but I enjoyed it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be kind of average because it didn't have Matthew McConaughey and that kind of thing. But towards the end, I'm like, you know what? I actually really enjoyed this.
Yeah, and apparently there's a new series coming out as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he's Guy Ritchie. He's got a new one out that's not that, but it's called Mobland. Have you seen that?
No.
It's on par with like the Gentleman movie because it's and the Gentleman series, but it's like different. It's got Tom Hardy in it,
Yeah, I love Tom Hardy. It's
and
good.
he's kind of like he's the kind of like I think they call him the fixer. So you know how like Charlie Hunnam in The Gentleman is to Matthew McConaughey.
Hmm.
He's kind of
Yeah.
like that. It's quite good.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, definitely recommend it. Okay, mate, that'll probably pull us up there, and
Beautiful.
we went for an hour and 40 minutes, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, it's been a good conversation.
Yeah,
it's always a good conversation when it goes quick. You know, it's been a good conversation.
Absolutely, mate. I think one of the cool things is, like as you said at the top of the show, like you you like light up when you talk about training and you're excited about it and you enjoy it and you're passionate about it. And I think when you have, that's the whole thing is I want for the show is to have people talk about the thing that you're most passionate about. Obviously, I am as well too with health and fitness, but there's going to be those slightly little different avenues that you're going to be, more well versed in, and other people and whatnot. And I think it makes for a good little conversation. I'll just press stop there, mate, and just get you to stay on for one sec.